What's up everyone, how's it going? So today we're going to be looking at deadlift accessory movements. We're going to do one for strength off the floor, one for strength in the mid-range, one for strength at lockout, one to keep you healthy, which is important, one to keep you explosive, as well as one to keep your back tight to help your positioning. The first exercise for strength off of the floor is going to be the leg press. So this is great for really giving you that power, that boost off of the floor, and it really does help your first few inches of the movement. And this is because a leg press is actually pretty similar to a deadlift. You might not think so, but I'll show you why. So I just turn the same clip sideways and pretend that the pad is the floor and that this is a deadlift. As you can see, it actually seems pretty similar mechanically to a deadlift. There are some differences. The knees can come forward a little bit more, but overall, this is a pretty good replication of a deadlift, and this is why it gives you such good results. If you put your feet higher, it's going to be more hamstrings, more glutes. If you put your feet lower, like in this position, it's going to be more quads. I tend to put my feet somewhere in the middle so that it's a nice mix of quads and hamstrings. Typically, I would recommend just putting your feet, wherever is comfortable and whichever lets you use the most weight. For me, that's sort of in the upper middle area. In terms of width, I wouldn't go super narrow. I wouldn't go super wide. Again, just moderate. So moderate height, moderate width, and that should be able to maximize your strength on this exercise. And I find this is a great way to get in a lot of volume. The deadlift is so easy to overdo because it's working so many muscles, but if you specifically want to increase your strength off of the floor, I think you should take the lower back out of the movement and just focus on the quads, on the glutes, and on the hamstrings. And again, this is going to be so much easier to recover from compared to a deadlift. In terms of rep range and volume, sets per week, I would say rep range depends on your deadlift goal. If your deadlift goal is a 1 rep max, I would say sets of 5 to 8 in the leg press is going to be suitable. I wouldn't really go too much below sets of 5. I know I started this video with a set of 4, but typically I would say 5 to 8 if you're interested in strength. If you're interested in more hypertrophy or a higher rep deadlift goal, like if you have a 5 rep max goal in your deadlift, I would say 8 to 12 is going to be a good amount for the leg press. And again, you can do a ton of volume on this exercise because it is fairly easy to recover from. And so I would say per session, you could easily do 4, 5, 6 working sets. My last workout was 12, 4x10, and then a few other heavier sets. So you can quite easily do, well, not easily, but you can manageably do 5, 6, 7, 8 working sets. And with deadlifts, that might be a little bit much. In terms of technique, I think every leg press is going to be a little bit different, but one important thing is to get a good range of motion. So you can see I'm getting as much range of motion as I can. There might be a few reps that I occasionally cut short, but on the whole, I'm going pretty deep. On the whole, get it? I think if you're doing half reps, if you're doing quarter reps, you're probably just tearing up your knees and you're not getting a lot of power off the floor just because the range of motion is going to be so short. So I think if you have the choice between doing more quarter reps and doing less quality reps, just do less quality reps. You're going to get more out of them, and you want to improve. So definitely do those quality reps that are deep and you're controlling the entire range of motion. You can also go pretty close to failure, at least on this type of movement. If you have the version where there's a weight coming down on top of you, I would be much more conservative just because you don't want to get squished. I've seen some horrible videos. Another point is that you don't want to fully lock out at the top. As you can see at the top, I'm not quite locked out. My knees are not completely straight. Again, you can really hurt yourself if you do leg press with totally straight legs. All right, the next one is going to be the Pallof Press. Now, this is an awesome movement to keep you healthy. And this is the best way to teach beginners, or anyone, how to brace their core. And this is going to be the most important factor for keeping healthy. This movement forces you to brace. As you can see, my neck vein is coming out. I have to take a big deep breath before each rep, and I'm trying to brace. And this is essential because basically the weight is trying to rip you in half. As you can see, when you press it out, there's a lot of torque on the spine. It's trying to twist you sideways, and you need to resist by flexing your abs. So this is really a good representation of what happens during a deadlift. So in a deadlift, you have a weight that is trying to break your spine in half, and you need to brace your core and keep your trunk rigid. And this is a very, very good way to practice that. So you can use a rope attachment, you can use any other attachment, and I don't use a belt usually, but you do need to be able to brace. You need to be able to feel, as you can see here, I'm pushing in, where a belt would go, and be able to push against an imaginary belt. You can also use a straight handle. I prefer a rope. I think a rope is a little bit better, but play around with a few different implements and see which one that you like. Just because I prefer a rope, but maybe you prefer a bar or something else. So again, experiment. It's your training. These are just some suggestions, but you really do need to take these suggestions and this advice and apply it to your own training. All right, the next one is going to be a type of row, and I first saw Pete Rubish do these, and he is massively strong on these. He was doing these with huge amounts of weight, and I really do think they are beneficial. If you look at a typical row, it's going to be above the knees, and it's only going to be working the back. But I think that if you want your rows to carry over to your deadlift, that you want to start your row below the knee. You really want to start from the floor, be able to flex your lats and keep your back tight, and then use your legs to explode the bar upwards. And this is going to be really, really good for teaching you to drive with your legs while also using your back. It's also really, really good for grip strength. This is 120 kilos, I think here, double overhand. So if you can double overhand big weight, your grip will never be a problem. And this is 130 kilos. This is where it's getting pretty ugly, and this is my top set, just because maybe I could use 140, but I probably wouldn't really be able to fully lock it out. So with this one, I think it's better to be conservative with the weights and really not go super heavy. This is, I think, 100 kilos that I'm doing here for back down sets. I think I did 5 sets of 5 on the back down sets. And for this movement, I would keep the reps fairly low. I would go 3 to 5 reps. Here you can see my posture. I am slightly rounded in the upper back. My lower back is not rounding, okay? It's not rounding at all. I do have a very built up lower back. My spinal erectors are very large, so it might appear like I'm rounding, but trust me, I'm not rounding, okay? So if you have any comments about how I'm super rounded over, I'm not, okay? If I was super rounded over, I'd be injured by now. I have done speed deadlifts before, but I never really got that much out of it. But these ones, I really feel like they build my explosiveness, they help my positioning off the floor. I added a pause on that one, and I really do think they help keep your lats tight. So you really focus on getting the lats tight off of the floor and then exploding upwards. This isn't a row where you're only using your back. It's not a pure pendlay row. You are using a lot of quads, a lot of hips, to really get that bar launched upwards. All right, the next one is going to be the RDL, or the Romanian Deadlift. Now, I'm doing this double overhand to also work on my grip strength, but this is really going to help the mid-range. So if you ever fail a deadlift around the knee, this is going to be really, really good. I really like how these feel. I really feel like they build up the spinal erectors, they build up the grip, they build up the hamstrings, and this is one movement that definitely gives you more than it takes. A conventional deadlift from the floor often does the opposite. It takes more than it gives. But this one, I feel like it really builds the deadlift. So you can put plates under your toes to really focus on the hamstrings. And probably the most important thing about this one is to keep your lower back flat. Your upper back, again, can round slightly, and it's not really that big a deal. But your lower back should not be tucking under. If you feel like your pelvis is tucking under you, you're getting that butt wink, or you are just rounding under, that is something that's really going to cause problems in the short term as well as the long term. So you really don't want to be rounding with the lower back. Again, sometimes for me it looks like I'm rounding, but that's just because I have very dense spinal erectors in that area. So really keep your form strict on these. Don't go super heavy. I've gone super heavy in the past. I've used like 160, 170 kilos, which is like 80 to 90% of my deadlift max. But I think you're better off keeping, to 50, 60, 65% and staying a little bit stricter. All right, the next one is going to be the good morning. This is a similar movement pattern to the Romanian deadlift. In fact, if you remove the bar from the equation, they look almost identical. However, I feel this movement very, very differently. So the main difference between this and the Romanian deadlift is that you cannot use your lats to keep the bar close. So when you're doing a Romanian deadlift or any deadlift, you can use your lats and your arms and the long head of your triceps and your rear delts and your entire back to bring the bar closer to you. When the bar is on your back in this position, you cannot do that. You cannot try to actively bring the bar back towards you. So if you are weak at this movement, it means that you need to practice it. And I am not very strong at this movement. So I'm only using 40 kilos on this lift. And for me right now, that is plenty. And I think if you can use a movement and not use super heavy weight and still get a lot out of it, I think that is really, really good. So this is a really good exercise to teach your positioning, to focus on sitting the hips back, on keeping your back flat, as well as keeping your core braced and tight. Be very conservative with the loading. This is actually how Bruce Lee hurt his back, so definitely be careful. These, on the other hand, are very back friendly. These are back extensions on a back extension machine, as it were. Surprising how that works out. So this version that I'm doing is where you put the barbell on your back, and this allows you to get a ton of range of motion. I mentioned Pete Rubish before. He actually does these where the bar is on the ground, and it limits the range of motion, both at the bottom and at the top. So I actually prefer doing it this way, and I've used like 70 kilos on these before. But typically I will use 40 to 50 kilos, just for reference. And these are really going to work wonders on your lockout strength. So if you're having trouble to lock out the bar, this is really going to help a lot. As you can see, the most difficult part of the range of motion is actually at the very top. It's at the very end where the hips are almost extended. So this is really going to be a tremendous, I know it's called a back extension, and it does work the spinal erectors. However, the biggest two muscles are going to be the glutes and the hamstrings, especially the glutes at the top. So if you really focus on squeezing the glutes into the pad, you're going to get a ton of glute activation at the top. Brett Contreras is a really big advocate of these because they are very effective for the glutes. Of course, they also work a lot of hamstrings. You can basically see my hamstrings working here. So basically, anywhere above the knee, this is really going to help. Actually, heck, this basically builds the entire deadlift. Whenever I do these, my deadlift goes up. If I am strong at these, I know that my deadlift is good. It's just that simple. It carries over that much. I would say if I had to pick two from this list, it would be back extensions and Romanian deadlifts. Those are going to have the most carryover to my deadlift. For you, it could be one of these. It could be none of these. This is just what I do to improve my deadlift. This is the deadlift accessory work that I do. So I would advocate that you try these out in your training, but I'm not going to promise you that these will blow up your deadlift just because you're different than me, and you might have different leverages or different weaknesses that you need to work on. I will, however, post 6 different alternatives that you'll have already seen in the video, so those can hopefully help you out as well. Plus, my book, Sweat, has hundreds of different exercises that can absolutely help you build an amazing deadlift. So if you're interested in that, get it on Amazon. It is $8 and it is awesome. So definitely get it. The reviews have been awesome. So pick up your copy today. All right, that is it for today. Make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I will see you next time. Peace.